It's great, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. Hopefully we'll get a few more trickle through. We are very punctual today, aren't we? So welcome to 2025 and welcome to you, Pat. This is our first admin conversation with yourself of the year. So hopefully we've not got anything too exciting happening in the next 12 months. But did you have a nice Christmas, Pat?
I did indeed, thank you, Lisa. And I had a very nice Christmas, and then unfortunately got one of these hideous viruses that is doing the rounds currently. And so that was probably the first thing I was going to bring up with you today, which is, and I've written an article for Dentistry on it, and actually going to do my webinar on partly on this next week. And you know, I think my, because it really it was a nasty virus. I would say it was respiratory syncytial virus, this RSV virus that they vaccinate pregnant ladies against, and if you are much older, then they recommend vaccination against it as well. And so I was just going to raise the point that B virus alert, because I don't know how it's been in your practice, Lisa, but certainly in my practice, we've had some illness. My virus took, well, I wasn't seriously ill. It just went on and on and on and on. And then actually my husband came home from work the other day and he said, oh, such and such a patient, he said he died of RSV. Now he was much older and had health medical issues, but I think the message now really is to just go back to being very careful and doing the things you should be doing. So I've had a message this morning. I'm running some training in a couple of weeks' time on could I cover hand hygiene, because people have become complacent over it. You know, since COVID, when we were all washing our hands, singing happy birthday twice, you know, we've regressed to, and I'm guilty too, we've regressed to not being as careful as we should have been. So I think my message is be virus alert. Now I know this is a difficult one, but I would encourage people not to come to work if they are obviously infectious. So if they feel ill, have a fever, or the symptoms. So it's not just COVID. COVID's around, yes, there's a flu epidemic as well, but it's these other viruses as well, including a thing called HPMV, which is around in Scotland, and in certainly in Scotland it's rife, and hospitals and GP practices are masking up again. So I think just be very aware, think about not coming to work if you're unwell. Now, I know that's a difficult thing to say, because sometimes, you know, particularly if the employer doesn't pay if you're off. But the problem is that if you get somebody who's got a nasty virus, they come into work, they spread it around everybody, and then you end up with no staff members to see the patients, and or perhaps no clinicians. And then that affects productivity and affects revenue. So it is, in my view anyway, it is a false economy to make people come to work when they're not well.
I've definitely, I'm sure everyone else has their own experiences on it as well. We've definitely, there's been a lot of patient cancellations. Most people are pretty good, and most patients will cancel. It's bad for the diary, obviously, but it's the right thing to do. So on a kind of, with my practice management head on, it's make sure you've got a really good full short notice cancellation priority list that you can fill those diaries back up. I think part from a team point of view, what I've noticed with the practices that I support is, for some practices, there's this awful 3-month period where if they're not hitting their targets, the pressure's on. I've got practices that are going, we've got to do X amount of UDAs in this amount of days, otherwise we're stuffed. So team feel pressured to come in, and I understand, you know, it's a very difficult one, but I think the bottom line has to be, make sure you've got some cover, some good cover to come in, you know, some good locums, some good part-timers that are able to pick up if anyone is off poorly. Be prepared for people to be ill is, I suppose.
I think that's excellent advice, Lisa. And actually, this is the beauty of our sessions, because I'm going to put over the clinical risks and issues and potentially the compliance issues, and you're going to put the very realistic point of view of, well, if this does happen, so if you do have a viral meltdown in the practice, you know, be prepared for that, and what are you going to do about it? So I think that's really, really sound advice. I also think that yes, you're right that patients are mostly good. That's if they've been trained to be good about not coming in. But I think that if you've got a patient who is clearly ill and clearly insisting on an appointment, not for any reason other than, well, you know, I wanted to have my veneers done. But if they're in pain, say, then think about separating that patient in time and space. So, you know, treat them in an area where you can get them to that isn't going to mean that they're sneezing all the way through the practice. And then perhaps look at maybe treating them at a time when you haven't got lots of other patients coming in after them. So I think
if people have genuinely got something like what you had, and you know, the more serious respiratory ones, they won't be able to keep their mouth open for
exactly. No, exactly.
They can barely talk.
I know. I know. And if they've got real proper flu, then they're flattened for 2 weeks, or certainly a week anyway. So yeah. So I think that's important. Plus also excellent hand hygiene, really important. Make sure you're washing your hands, sanitizing, and also, you know, make sure that you're cleaning frequently touched surfaces regularly. So things like door handles, where you know, you've got a patient who sneezes 50 times and then puts their hand on the door to go out. So things like that, just be aware of that.
Yeah, and just with the point of hand hygiene, you can probably see the lovely Gilly in the background of me here.
I can. Yes.
Gilly's our real life compliance manager. Gilly's she loves doing a hand hygiene audits, absolutely loves them. So actually doing it one-to-one with the team, you know, minimum sort of once a year. She got very excited about that, don't you? And it's just a great way to make sure everyone's reminded of it, of what they need to do, of what the contamination points are. Also, you know, the housekeeping around nails and such like, and things like that. So I think it's a really good reminder, get everyone into the habit. I know it sounds a bit how comfortable people are to go, okay, we're doing a one-to-one hand hygiene audit on you, but you'd be surprised the information you get from that, and the improvements that you need, even when you think you're quite on the ball with these things. And it's great, and it is just that reminder for the team that they need to follow these rules.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do think, though, we've all got a bit lazy and complacent about it, and you know, I know I have, and I think it is really important. And you know, it's a little bit like doing, well, it's not really very like it, but the idea of CPR training. You know, you remember what you've been taught at the time, but you know, 8 months down the track, if somebody drops down dead in front of you, can you remember everything you're supposed to be doing? And the answer is yes, you probably can, but it will be very stressful. So I think just a reminder that, you know, we must be, you know, observing excellent hand hygiene is really important.
I think it's just, you know, making sure that all areas we are looking out for any little slight breaches or slips of standards. I've noticed going around to practices, I've seen people in surgeries wearing cardigans and things like that, and I get it,
Mm.
but we've got to set these standards, haven't we? I'm like,
Yeah.
I wish they're like Michelin Man underneath the scrubs, as long as the lower
Yeah.
ones are there. You know,
Yeah.
it's difficult, and you know, some things with this, people think, oh, they're just being silly, pick your fights, but it can bring out a whole load of problems as well as being non-compliant, you know, genuine illness from it. But also I found, as I'm sure you have, Pat, if we don't have these set standards and adhere to them, or some do, some don't within a team, oh my goodness, that leaves the practice so vulnerable.
It really, really does. And then we've got this, I think it's a huge issue that a lot of principals, I'm going to say here, stick my neck out here and say, really, it's kind of, oh, I haven't got time for all this compliance stuff and why we do things like that. Now, if you have that kind of attitude, it gives the team the impression that it doesn't matter, and it really does, because there are consequences to not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. And actually, you know, the CQC inspecting you is probably the least of your problems. You know, although it is an issue because, you know, CQC has a huge amount of whistleblowing, as does the GDC, and just nobody wants that to happen. And so my view is just do things because it's the right thing to do, not because you're scared of the regulators. So that's the carrot, as in do the right things. But the stick is, if you don't, then you're putting, great word you used there, Lisa, you're making yourself very, very vulnerable as a practice and a business. And then you won't get to deliver any UDAs if the worst comes to the worst.
I think that's the thing, and you know, unfortunately, there are many practices that, you know, we have good, great staff, and then, you know, we sometimes part company, and any vulnerabilities could be used against you. So
Yeah.
as you say, you do it for the right reasons, but you also do it to protect yourself. So yeah, I think, you know, if we're going to split hairs about what we'll compromise on and what we won't with compliance, I just think you're causing such a potential argument for yourself. And I just want to go, these are the rules, these are what we have to follow. So there's no discussion about
Yeah.
well, you know, it's cold, and you know, it's just, these are the rules. That's it. And I think I've been doing a bit of a reset with sort of people that I've been talking to. It's back to basics. And I know that you're a big fan of let's get back to basics.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. On many things. And
yes, absolutely. Because I think it's easy to lose your way a little bit, you know, and times are really tough. And, you know, the last thing any practice wants is to, you know, have some kind of impediment to, you know, to getting those UDAs completed. And, you know, that we live in difficult times at the moment, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So, you know, getting these things right, what you're doing really is avoiding a pile of extra stress being lumped onto you. And you know, when things do go wrong, it is immensely stressful.
Massively. You know, as practice managers and owners in this group, it's much better to do prevention than it is to try and solve a problem once it's fully imploded. Because it takes hours and hours and hours. So a few hours making sure that things are being done properly is so much more pleasant than
So in your practice, Lisa, do you delay non-urgent appointments? Just going back to the virus situation, do you delay non-urgent appointments, and do you ever have any kickback from the patients on that?
No, not really. Genuinely, if they are poorly, they tend to It's more they will drop out themselves.
Yeah.
We get kickback when when we had a few weeks ago we had one of our dentists who, I might add, I don't think she's had a day off in the last, she's worked with us for 12 years, and I can't count on one hand how many times, and she provides children's RA. So we know that the children coming to these clinics, you know, it's a big thing for the parents because they're nervous, the patients are nervous. But genuinely, there was no one that could cover, or I could get to cover. And yeah, she was off poorly. She only does 1.5 days with us, and there was no wiggle room for her to come and do any extras because we need the sedation nurses. And yeah, the patients were pretty unfeeling. I mean, yeah, I'm a big fan of giving genuine reasons. It's not just
me too.
oh, we've got to cancel your appointment. It's, we are devastated, we've got to do this, we're so sad about it. As you know, probably Christina she's never off poorly, this never happened before. It's got to be extreme for us to be able to have to let you down like this. However, you know, and I think giving reasons, I mean, you know, parents can be a little bit and we see their child and what they need, and I think the only kickback we really get is if you do have to cancel the patients because the clinician's poorly.
It's
inconvenient.
Absolutely. And then the patients are vile to the receptionist and probably the practice manager, and then then they come in to see the dentist, and the dentist says, "I'm really sorry, I had to cancel your appointment." They go, "No problem at all."
Yeah, I mean, if you're a bit of a bossy practice manager like me, I make sure if anyone has given anyone grief, you know, unreasonably, we're all pretty good at taking a little bit of grief, aren't we? I would ask my clinician to have a bit of a word. You know, quite often it's a simple conversation. Sorry, I had to cancel. Oh, it's fine, don't worry. And it's like, okay, only I heard that you weren't very happy. You don't have to do it challenging, but I think, practice management wise, that's something that needs to be kept under control, and your team love you for it. They love, you know, that my team member, my nurse is probably, you know, or my receptionist is more important than one patient. And by, you know, sticking up for them and making sure that they're respected makes them feel valued. And
definitely, it's just, and as if you've got their backs as well.
I mean,
I think it's hugely important. And then the other thing I was just thinking about, Lisa, as well, and it's not really it's not focused solely on compliance, but it's about thinking at the beginning of a year, are there some small changes we could make in the practice that will make a big difference? So things like, is your recall system effective and efficient? Now, all of these things have a compliance side to them because that's what, you know, the regulators want to see, but also they have a business side to them. You know, so is your recall system working well? Is your laboratory work always where it should be on time? Do you really know what your patients think? Do you really know what your team thinks? Is your emergency cover arrangements, are those fit for purpose? And things like that. And I think doing that, having a bit of a reflect at the start of the year is really important, because it then there's kind of this thing about it's all new at the beginning of the year and you want to set it up for how you go forwards. Is that something you agree with, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great time to kind of write, you know, we've all, as people, got this January New Year, last year was rubbish, this year's going to be better, you know, and I think we have to have that and sort of come in with gusto. So I think, you know, it's a great time to review things, because I think that's a good mindset that we have at that point of the year. I think it's much better if we can look at things as a 360, as our whole year round. And I suppose, you know, I'm gonna, can't believe I'm saying this. This is why audits are wonderful. This is why
Yeah,
looking at key performance indicators every month is
yeah,
great, because it is easy to drop off. You know, you get to summer holidays, you know, and that January gusto might have ebbed a bit. Well, it will probably, we're thinking of holidays at that point, and we're maybe a bit short staffed because everyone's on holiday. So I think having a bit of more consistency, doing a little bit more often, and it might be, I mean, you might see in the background, we love our digital dentistry compliance dashboard and everything.
yeah,
Jilly, as you like to see at the back, also loves a
yeah,
bit of paper,
yeah.
and it's
Lovely,
fantastic.
brilliant, love it.
Yeah, so spread the love, spread the audits, little
Yeah,
bit often keeps Jilly a happy girl, and it
yeah,
makes sure that, you know, from a practice management point of view, we're consistent through the year, and we're not suddenly going, you know, as you might view it as, like you said before, you know, an inspection, it's like, do a bit often, don't
yeah.
wait, because believe me, if you haven't got stuff done and you get a notification, you're not going to get everything done if it's not been being done.
You're so right. You're so right.
Yeah,
Because they give you 2 weeks, which is great. But if you are not more or less where you should be, then 2 weeks is not enough. And spreading things out so you look at stuff over the years, really, really important. And you're right that there are sort of little points in the year where things things drop off. You know, like you know, February and March, everyone's focused on year end if you have an NHS contract, and then again in the summer, holiday time. And I think the other important thing is that, you know, from a compliance perspective, it's a team. It's a team thing. You know, and practice managers. I know you've got the wonderful Jilly. Not everybody has the wonderful Jilly. And I think, you know, delegating tasks around the team is incredibly important. It is what the CQC expects to see. More important than that, though, still, is that it doesn't put the whole of the burden on the practice manager or the compliance manager. And it also makes other team members feel more involved. I recall in our practice when, you know, we were kind of delegating tasks and giving things to different people to do. And the receptionist said, well, you know, I'd really like to be, would I be able to check the fridge temperature? So, well, yes, of course, because you don't need any clinical training to check the fridge temperature. You just need to know what temperature it needs to be. But she really took it very seriously. And this was her job. And so she checked the fridge temperature every day and recorded it. That's a small example, but it gave her a feeling of being involved in making sure that the practice was where it should be. So I think I'm a big fan of that.
yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, you know, they have to understand, every team member, it is their problem if things fall short. That is our jobs, that's our role, that's our registration. So if somebody hasn't been doing anything, it's not, oh well, it's the manager's fault or the owner's fault for not noticing. Yeah, you know, we cannot do everything, otherwise we wouldn't have any teams, would we, if we could do it all ourselves. So I think, you know, team understanding, you know, get them involved, because it's wonderfully great for morale and feeling valued and taking on more responsibility. But I think it's always good to have an element of, you are accountable too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Because it's not, you know, sometimes I go into practices and I see some of the nurses, you know, it's like they couldn't care
Not my
less.
problem. And
Yeah,
dare I say it, associates, actually.
yeah, yes, actually. Mine are wonderful. I'll just say
Of
that. Mine
course.
are wonderful.
Of course they
But
are.
yes,
They wouldn't think of being anything other. But
they
I've
wouldn't
been to,
dare with Jilly
yeah,
around.
I've been to practices and spoken to audiences where the associates say, well, it's not my problem, nothing to do with me. We'll find it is, actually. So I think that's an important message too.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, bearing, like we said at the beginning, I've known practices sort of quite recently where there has been problems with the team and behaviours, and that you need to sort that out. You need to sort that out. That is part of the being, obviously it's being well led and being effective, and we have to demonstrate these things as well. So yes, we've got, you know, Gilly's wonderful, we've got compliance manager, everyone's behaving themselves, but I think as managers we also need to make sure that other boxes are being ticked to make sure that that's the most effective way, you know, for us to manage our compliance and safety within the practices.
Yeah,
And I think you just
definitely.
keep banging on about it. Not, you know, Gilly doesn't, not that you bang on, Gilly, but you know, it's it's a constant conversation, you know, constant, and not just oh, we ought to do that and we ought to do this. And I think without sounding like a sell, you know, this is why people need compliance systems that work well for them. And I know obviously dentistry compliance is something that's easy. It's your friend, it's not your enemy, as I've kind of found some others to be. And it's that support, because, you know, we aren't, despite what we think, we aren't superheroes as practice managers, you know, and we do forget stuff. And I think it's just,
Of
yeah, do
course, because
yourself a favour.
we're human. Everyone's human. I think that's a really great way of putting it. Actually, your compliance system is not your enemy, and and that really has driven everything I've done in creating the system, because I know what it's like at the coalface, and I get it. And what you want to do is try and make it as easy and simple as possible, not as, look how clever I am. I've created this amazing thing that that actually is difficult to use. So I think that's really, really important, that you know, and different systems will suit different people, I think. But I think that the whole thing that's driven the development of our system is, how can we make it as simple and as understandable as possible, and as supportive as possible as well.
I think that's, you know, the big thing for me was that you guys actually ask practice managers what they want.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is
Yes.
like, oh my goodness, someone's
Yeah.
actually asking our opinion instead of
Yeah.
just telling us what we should be doing or what we should want. And I mean, I can see a couple of faces, well, not faces, names here, that I know have moved over as well. And there was always that question, is it difficult though? Is it difficult? Is setting up from scratch is pretty easy, but moving over from someone else, the support is there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it absolutely is. And you know, as I say, different systems will suit different people, but you know, we are we are adamant that you know, we will work tirelessly to make things as easy as possible, as we can for people. And I think also having somewhere to go that you know, you think, oh, I can't remember how to do this or that or the other. I don't just mean on the system, I mean compliance wise, having somewhere to go. I mean, obviously, you know, with Gilly and your experienced team, that probably doesn't happen for you. It does happen in other practices though. You know, where they think, oh, well, I've forgotten how often we take the temperature for Legionella testing, or, you know, how can we find out? And there's always somebody there to help with that.
Yeah, I think that's and we're quite excited. Just we're going to be in Manchester in March. Actually, we're going to be in Manchester and London in March, I think, aren't we? So the FMC Dentistry North of England Dentistry Show in March. I think it's the 8th of March, the Saturday.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So we're actually going to, Adam are going to be hosting a theatre, and there's going to be a lot of compliance, and I know that you've agreed to come and be one of our panelists.
Yeah,
so anyone
absolutely.
up north that wants to drop in and have a chat to us in person, we're going to be there all day.
Yeah, and bring your compliance queries, you know, even if you don't use our system and have no intention of ever using it, I'm always happy to help any and everybody, because you know it's a small profession and we need to help and support each other.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I know sometimes people are a bit shy about it. More than happy to answer any questions that people have. You can either pop it in the chat at the side. You can just type it in there, or you can just unmute yourself rather. That'll be absolutely fine.
Concerns that you've got at the start of the year. What are the things that are weighing in your mind? Doesn't necessarily only have to be from a compliance perspective, because you've got Lisa here too with her wealth of experience. So ask us anything, that will we will do our best to help you.
I think that's the thing, you know, there's so many resources, and I know, Pat, you will always answer any questions for anyone who's and as a member, I can recognise some names again. You know that you can get in touch with us and ask us. Dentistry Compliance have partnered with the association, which we're hugely grateful for, to get that support.
Hello,
so you
Lisa.
don't have... Hello,
hello, Pat. Hope you're both
Hi.
well.
Yes,
I do have a question. Will you be doing any kind of workshop on the new way the CQC inspect dental practices, and what are the key areas that we should be focusing on? If you have any feedback from anyone that's had a CQC inspection, what are the inspectors looking at, and
yes, good, great question.
How to prepare? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Muna. The truth of the matter is that really nothing has changed. So good will still be good. Not very good will still not be very good. And poor and hopeless will still be poor and hopeless. It is all the same stuff packaged in a slightly different way. So it's like taking a jigsaw puzzle, putting all the pieces in a box, shaking it up, and then putting it back together. It's all the same stuff. So there is nothing to be concerned about in terms of, do we need to do things differently? The CQC is in a very bad place at the moment. You know, I mentioned earlier that their systems have gone down. That's kind of the least of their problems. And I've always been a massive I've always been very, very positive about the CQC, not just because it's meant I could have a business, but because I think it is needed. You know, if you'd seen some of the stuff I've seen out in practice, you would agree that somebody should have oversight of practices, and people shouldn't just be never scrutinized. But I think they are in a really difficult situation at the moment and have been judged as being not fit for purpose. So I think in terms of worrying about what the new framework looks like, I would say, please do not give it another thought. It's slightly different, but it's not very different. I will certainly, if you all think that there'd be, I did do one last year on what it looks like, but the webinar I do monthly for dentistry for FMC, I'd be very happy to do that again and just talk about. So there's all this talk about, there's these quality statements. So quality statements are things that express how you do things as a practice. Okay, so it will say, we in this practice do this, and this is how we fulfill the requirements. And then the CQC want evidence. But the thing is that it's all the same stuff. So the infection control is still the same infection control. So you still have to do your audits, you have to do everything that is part of infection control. You have to have an infection control policy with a named lead, you have to have a decontamination policy, you have to have clear procedures. It's all the same stuff. And it can't be any different, because bugs are bugs wherever you are and whatever you're doing. And all you're doing is following the published guidance, which is HTM 0105, although that's another story because anecdotally that is being updated. And it does need to be because it's 2010 that first came out, and there's quite a lot in it that does need to change. But whether or not that will happen and when, I'm afraid is anybody's guess. So I think really, Muna, to answer your question, it is all the same stuff as it's always been. So provided you do the stuff you always have had to, then you will be fine. Does that answer your question?
It does indeed. So it just reminds me of when we started back in '86 when we worked with the FPC and then they changed their name. So basically they all did the same thing. It just got rebranded, a very expensive rebranding and a complete waste of taxpayers' money.
It's a complete waste of time and taxpayers' money. You're completely right. I do think maybe since you've raised the question, that it would be a good thing to do. I've already got my webinar for next week, which is quite a lot along the lines of what I've talked about today, written and planned. And I'd be very happy to do another one, just really reassuring people that it's the same stuff. And I think, don't listen to anybody who tries to say to you, oh, it's all completely different. You've got to do these completely different things and only we can help you. That just simply isn't.
We get a number of those emails coming through saying, oh, you may no longer be compliant and you must do this and you must do that, and exactly selling their services as such. No, that's very reassuring. If it's possible to pop the link if there's space on the webinar for next week, if you could pop a link somewhere, I'd be very grateful. If I can jump on it, I'd love to. And if not, then perhaps the lovely Lisa might arrange something and we can send in questions and stuff. So that would be amazing. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That's a pleasure, Muna. And it's way beyond my technical abilities to do that. So I will ask one of the FMC team to send Lisa the link or Sam the link.
Thank you.
And they will send it out to
Fabulous.
you.
Thank you very much.
I think Andrea, welcome.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah, I'm waiting in the queue. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Pam.
Hi.
Yeah, not too bad. Well,
Well, as long as you've got some nice biscuits, because I'm popping to see you, aren't I?
I know. Yeah, I will get some ready for you. A quick question. We had our CQC inspection. I had.
Yes.
So the CQC inspector
asked me.
Just
lost you a little bit.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I felt really strange on that day because the inspector asked me for an inoculation injury risk assessment. And
what?
Inoculation
do you mean a Sharps injury risk assessment?
Yes, I don't know exactly what was that meant because I'm practice manager and we work with iComply. For 3 years, I haven't seen an inoculation injury risk assessment. This is how she asked me. And I looked with her online on iComply and I showed her that there is not a risk assessment specific to Sharps or inoculation injury. The only, we had few questions in general health and safety risk assessment, but only few questions. It wasn't a proper risk assessment only for the Sharps. So now my question is, do we have to do a specific inoculation injury risk assessment or not?
Yeah, yes, you do. You do. You should do a Sharp. You should. It's called a Sharps injury risk assessment, and yes, you should be doing it.
Because I looked in so many different ways or names, things like this, but iComply doesn't have one.
I think, was that because maybe if she called it an inoculation, that's obviously.
I tried with Sharps as well.
Yeah.
We do have one now. Jake has said it is within the health and safety.
Yeah,
risk
but that's
assessment.
not. That's in general for general health and safety. It's not a proper
Yeah.
risk assessment for sharps.
Yeah, well, our view is that you should have a separate sharps
Yeah,
injury risk
exactly.
assessment. Yeah,
That's what they said.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And yeah, so yes, the answer to your question, do you need to have one? Yes, you do.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
maybe suggest to iComply that they create one.
Create it.
I mean, we have one. We have one, and I am surprised they don't. So I just wonder whether, as Lisa says, it's called something else. It may not be called an inoculation injury risk assessment, but it might be called a sharps injury risk assessment.
I will actually contact them after the webinar to see, because
Yeah.
well, they didn't write about it on our feedback,
Okay, good.
but that was because I showed them, look, I didn't know, and there
Yeah.
is not on our compliance provider, so they don't provide us this. Otherwise, I would know and I would do it.
Absolutely,
Yes, of course.
that really is a great example of you don't know what you don't know, and unfortunately though that doesn't wash with the CQC usually,
Yeah, no.
because it is your responsibility to know. And Elisa, have you got anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, you got notification before Christmas, Andrea, and I think, you had a lot of pressure. And I imagine that, your inspector could see that you really want to do a good job. And I know, like Pat says, there's things that won't wash. They don't see, oh, we're going to break a rule because, oh, well, it was Christmas, that compliance is compliance. You either are or you aren't.
Yeah.
I think, that's an example of that's not something that, they're going to mention in your report, because that's something that they can see you've tried to.
Yeah. Yes.
And you genuinely, you're bothered about it. So I think, making sure that you've got a system that you can navigate your way around and find things on. And everyone likes different ones, it's a personal choice. I think it's finding a system that you feel comfortable with, that ticks the boxes that you want. And, I'm sure iComply will take the feedback if it needs to be separated or something else. I'm sure that they would do that. But, coming back in, what was it, the 7th of January, and having a CQC inspection.
Well, same as I said to my principal, those 2 weeks notice were not 2 weeks notice, considering that 2 days of Christmas were bank holiday and 1st of January was bank holiday. We actually don't work, it's a bank holiday, it's a day off from government. And then CQC inspection on 7th of January.
Tough. That's horrible. That is horrible.
I remember. Sorry, Pat, go on.
No, you go on.
I was just going to say, I remember when we last had ours, I think it was the week before Christmas, but I would prefer the week before Christmas than
instead of after.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit miffed at the time, because it was like, we should be, December's busy enough, and you've got kids. My kids were a lot smaller at that point, and you've got things to do, nativities, and you've got your Christmas shopping. And I know that isn't as important as, obviously health and safety and compliance. But, we are people at the end of the day, which is why, this 2 weeks notice that we get isn't so we've got time to get stuff straight. It's because it suits them. So we should be as prepared, and we can never, ever be perfect. We're not. And Andrea, I know that you've worked your backside off in the practice. So, don't underestimate what a wonderful job you're doing.
Absolutely. And Andrea, the thing with a sharps injury, so the sharps regulations are very specific about what you must do. And actually a lot of regulations say you should do X, Y, or Z. the sharps regulations say what you must do. Now, one of those things is that it says that you must use safer sharps, and but quite a lot of dentists won't use them.
Same
And
like my principal.
Yes, exactly. So that's why, and because safer sharps are do what it says on the tin, they are safer. And you've got a dentist or dentists in the practice who are not using safer sharps, then that's even more important that you do a risk assessment, because the risk of injury when you don't use safer sharps is much higher than when you do. So I think it's very, very important that you protect people from the risks associated with sharps injury. Now, the reason they call it an inoculation injury is because inoculation injuries also extend to stuff in your face, going in your eyes. That counts as an inoculation injury. And so actually it is more accurate to call it an inoculation injury risk assessment than sharps injury, because of the risk of damage to your eyes by not wearing protective glasses.
Mm-hmm. So what I did, oh my goodness. On the general health and safety risk assessment, it was there a question saying that if we use safer sharps, we have an associate, and she qualified 1 year ago, so she is used only to safer sharps, so we had to get safer sharps for her. But we had a question saying that if we don't use safer sharps, explain why. So
yeah,
I asked Jamie, I suggested Jamie so many times to use safer sharps. He just doesn't feel safe using them. He said he tried them in the past, and he thinks sharp injury can happen really easy. So this is what I wrote on the risk assessment, and we actually didn't have any problems about it, about using normal sharps.
Yeah, that absolutely. But I think it isn't okay to say, well, I'm not going to use them because I don't want to, or
No.
Or because I've always done it this way. I think that if that is what Jamie genuinely thinks, finds, and believes, absolutely fine. But have it recorded that is the reason. And also, it's not okay to say, well, we don't use safer sharps because they're more expensive. Not that they are, but there is a misconception about that. So I think for a genuine reason, like Jamie doesn't feel safe using them, and I get that. I wasn't trained to use safer sharps. You can get used to it though, and you can retrain yourself to use safer sharps. But I think if that is the way he wants to work, then that's fine. Therefore, you need a sharps risk assessment that shows what you do to prevent sharps injuries when you're not. What precautions you take. A risk assessment will show what precautions you're taking when you're not following the official guidance. But in that particular situation, you can do a risk assessment, and that's probably why the inspector was asking about it, if they noticed that you weren't using safer sharps.
Yeah.
I think I've seen this come up quite a bit. I would say majority of dentists kind of go, oh no, I don't want to use that, and it's like, well, you need to tell me why. You need to explain to me why, because when you get people going, oh well, it's only guidance, and that's only guidance, this is only guidance. You've got to justify. I've been in practices where they've not had to use the same level of fire protocols because there's only a few people, and it's like, okay, so you're not going to have the in-house inspections that we all normally have if you're quite a big practice, but are we saying that if 2 people die in a fire, it's all right because it's only 2 people? You know, you have to justify why you've not done something. So yes, it's guidance, isn't it? But I get sort of frustrated when you've got, as we went back, if we go back to like the vulnerability side of things, that's okay. If a dentist decided they're not using it, they need to justify why, because if something does happen, they're going to have to stand by that. And I've seen so many practices where they've not put together okay, so the dentist isn't using safer sharps, they're going to do all of this, they're going to take the matrix, they're going to do everything, all the sharp bits, and the nurse literally will just put it in the box and take it through, will not touch anything. And nurses are in some parts kind of going, well, it's all right, I'll do that bit for you, I don't mind.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, do
Yeah.
not leave. And quite often it's associates that will let them do it, but the fall will be on the principal and the registered manager if something happens. Again, you're leaving yourself vulnerable, aren't you?
You are, and there's that V word again, Lisa. And also then the other thing is that it's really important to understand how important guidance is. So it might not be written in statute, so that we have legal requirements. And actually the sharps injury regulations are written in statute. They are law. There's a bit of wriggle room within them. But quite often people say, well, it's only guidance. So, you know, we can make our own minds up. No, you can't. You absolutely can't. Guidance is stuff that has to be followed. And if you don't follow it, you need a really, really cast iron, bulletproof reason for not following it.
I think it's the same with, you know, a lot of people do feel that HTM is guidance.
Which it is. So Parliament has not sat and pored over HTM 0105. It is guidance. That is correct. However, if you get yourself into trouble with the NHS, the GDC, the CQC, or any of the other regulators, that is the guidance. They will wave at you and say, this is what you say you should be doing. Why haven't you done it? And then they will sanction you for not having done it. So, you know, this word guidance is very misleading.
I think, and, you know, I've seen, I'm not saying that this is anyone, this is kind of a general thing that I do sort of come across. It is easy to pick and choose the bits you want to follow.
Yeah, that's guidance. I don't have to follow it.
Yeah, well, you know, it says that, but as long as I'm doing this, and it ultimately, it is all there, and whether it's guidance or law, whatever it is, it's up to us. If we can say, well, yes, but I think that's a load of rubbish because I do this and I think that's much safer, you know, within reason, that's what our risk assessments are, isn't it? I know, you know, Gilly, when she's putting her policies together, she'll use obviously the information we get from you guys. She'll look at various other sites as well, government websites, all sorts, and pull together her own sort of risk assessment. Now, as you said before, not everyone's got a Gilly sat in the background. But that's again why these risk assessments are helpful when they're given to us by people like yourself, and we have that guide to follow, so we don't have to interpret ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. You see, actually the pandemic was perfect for me because I could say must to everything. Whereas I much prefer the word must to should, because should mean that's when people say, oh, you only say should, so I can make my own mind up. Can I? And the answer to that is yes, you can, but understand the consequences of making your own mind up. Whereas it's much easier if you can say must, which is what, going back to the sharps regulations, it says must all the way through it. As does the GDC. So the GDC standards for the dental team says must all the way through it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And as a practice manager, I had a conversation yesterday with a practice owner, and they were quite frustrated that some of the team weren't doing what they should have been doing, and they wanted to do it differently, which wasn't really correct. And I said, sometimes as managers, we have to embrace the power of the word no,
Yeah.
that can't happen, no. And
Yeah.
it's that must happen, no, that can't happen. And sometimes we have to be that direct person to go, no.
Yeah,
There's no
agreed.
negotiating on this one. This is it. That has to happen. And if it doesn't, why? And I think we'll, we don't always want to be that dictator type of person, but there are some instances, particularly around compliance, where I feel we have to, bring out that inner boss.
Inner tyrant. Yeah.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
Love an inner tyrant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, if we're not seen to take it seriously, then nobody else in the practice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Would they? But,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad, you're through it, Andrea, and just think January's nearly done.
Thank goodness for that, eh?
I know. I'm hoping February is a little bit more pleasant.
Yeah.
But
Andrea, has that answered all your questions?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Good.
Wonderful. Thanks,
Anyone
Andrea.
else? Please feel free to ask anything.
Everyone's
just rushing back and telling their dentist
now. If no one has a question, I have a short question. Probably easy to answer. So with fire evacuation plan, are we allowed to do that, or a competent person has to do it for us?
You need to have a fire risk assessment carried out by an outside expert.
We had that done.
Yeah, at least once, and then you need to follow the guidance, and you need to correct anything that they say in the fire risk assessment. After that,
we have many things to correct. And one of them is, as I said, fire evacuation plan. So we need to create one.
Yes, you can do that yourselves.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. I think the fire and Legionella, and we've mentioned these things before. There are certain areas that we wouldn't touch with a barge pole. There's certain areas of compliance that we go, no, let's, I'm not going to decide I'm a competent person.
Yeah.
I am, hopefully, most of the time. But in that area of Legionella or whatever else, I think, it's the same with HR and things like that. It's like, we're not experts in this field, in all these fields, which is why we've got people like yourselves to go to. And, we're not a HR lawyer, we're not a marketing guru, we're certainly not a fire inspector. And fire regulations are a little bit like HR and compliance. They do change, and we've got to keep up. And how is that possible to do that 100% all the time? And it's not. So it's definitely something that I think is, if you can outsource some of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's nothing to stop you having a fire risk assessment paid for by an expert every year. A lot of practices have it once and then do their own after that, and that's fine too. But you have to make sure you put everything right on the official fire risk assessment done by a competent expert.
Yeah. I would actually mention that is not right us to do it, because now after the CQC inspection, I realized that the fire risk assessment we used to do and the CQC inspection who came in 2018 to see our practice now completely changed their mind because the law changed. So in 2018, we passed our CQC inspection with all the fire actions we were taking within the practice. Now we are not compliant because of fire and because of the new regulation and the new law that has been changed last year.
I think, as Lisa says, it's important that you stay up to date with what the requirements are. And the other thing I think just to acknowledge here is that different CQC inspectors focus on different things. And so yours obviously was keen on fire, and which they all are, in all honesty. Ever since Grenfell, everyone is very, very keen on fire, and rightly so, in my opinion. I've seen a few practices burn down and wish that they had done things differently. So I think, but again, it's the what you don't know. So you need to have a reliable source of information that you're sure is accurate and up to date. And if you're concerned, then you should check the regulations yourself, or do something like, you have to be a bit careful with it, but type into ChatGPT, which is free, what do the latest, most recent fire regulations require of a dental practice, and you'll be amazed at the stuff that comes out. But I think you need to have somewhere that you can go to where you are sure that the information you're getting is accurate.
Yeah, I think you've got to weigh up, you know, what's the risk of me doing this?
Yeah.
And I in most cases, I'll just say, well, I wouldn't do it. I don't want to be, I do not want to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
I'd rather get somebody else to come and do that.
Sensible.
Definitely.
That's very sensible.
Definitely. Oh, it's been lovely having our January Pat and Lisa chat back. Almost right.
Yeah, it just rhymes really well, doesn't it? Lisa and Pat have a chat.
And Sam has cats. Sam's actually got 7 cats. So actually on that note, I'll just say thank you to Sam from Adam for organising.
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Very welcome.
I know me and Pat are a nightmare. It's like you've said, herding cats when we're trying to put dates together and things. So Sam's just reminded us that she's got 7 cats now that just turned up at her house and won't leave because she's too nice.
Wherever they go, wherever they go. Yes. And we do have a date already for February, which is good, which is the 26th of February. So, and then we've got March as well, which again I think is the 26th.
Fantastic.
So it's for the next 3 months, and
Brilliant.
those will go out to the members and online to book.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to send questions, as Pat said before, anyone wants to send questions before then or for then, please do so. You can don't wait to get in touch, you know, just do it sooner, and then it's something off the to-do list, isn't it? And we'll always do our best to help everyone. Anybody that wants any information about dentistry compliance, I would say have a demo, have a look for yourself. I think everyone that I've recommended it to has actually got it and migrated. So yeah, I think it's growing really well now, Pat, isn't it? So the more people we've got, the more it grows.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is, and we're absolutely delighted. But you know, I would never badmouth other systems either, or suggest that ours is the only system that can do all of this. That, you know, the proof of the pudding in it is in happy members using it and being safe and passing their CQC inspections. So, but yeah, delighted to welcome new members, and it's very easy to get a demo and no obligation, of course.
Thank you, Pat. I think one of the nice things about it is it does feel like a bit of a community.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is nice. We're all in it together.
We are. And we are indeed.
Spirit.
Yeah, we are.
And we'll always be here. We'll be back month after month because there's always something to do. So yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us. Special, obviously, thanks to Pat. It's been wonderful getting all your expertise. And hopefully we'll see everybody in February.
Brilliant. Lovely. Have a good
thank you.
a good day.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.